Story 1. My parents went to high school with Tom Petty. Supposedly, he was a nice guy whom some people called Rabbit because of his teeth. Story 2. Adam Scott was kind in high school. I am truly pleased with his success and wish him all the best. Story 3. I didn't know him before he was famous because he's much older than me, but John Malkovich was our neighbor growing up. When Being John Malkovich came out on VHS, I picked it up in the video store and asked my sister why someone made a movie about that old guy who always stops to talk to Grandpa about sports. She laughed at me and didn't explain. I watched the movie on cable about a year later when I was 8 or 9 years old, and it freaked me out because I recognized John Cusack as a celebrity but not John Malkovich, the guy who mows his lawn in khakis. So again, why would John Cusack want to be my old, boring neighbor? Story 4. Miranda Kerr moved to my school shortly after she was discovered but was not yet famous for winning the Dolly magazine yearly model search competition. She was kind, smart, and very down-to-earth. I was quite the social outcast, but she always included me in conversations and rarely had a bad word to say about anyone. I'm glad she is doing well. Story 5. I knew Aziz Ansari in college, especially during my freshman year. I got stoned with him a couple of times. He was extremely different. Basically a raver kid who wore giant baggy pants and always had huge headphones around his neck. He had a very odd manner of speaking, hard to explain, but nothing like his newer, polished, and eloquent style. He was very funny without seemingly trying. A group of us in one class told him he should try stand-up comedy, so I like to pretend that I helped launch his career. Story 6. I went on a few dates with Brendan Fraser right before he moved to Los Angeles to get discovered. We met at a mutual friend's house and spent the entire evening sitting in a hammock together, talking about things that seemed very important to a 19 or 20-year-old. I invited him to see a play, and he took me to watch him in a production of A Midsummer's Night Dream at an outdoor theater. He played Puck. It was a magical production, and it was clear he had talent. We had a few other dates, but I don't remember what we did. He was sweet, very intense, and gave me one of the most memorable first kisses of my life. Although he was gorgeous and a lovely person, I didn't get attached. He was planning his move when we met. It was a romantic little fling. To be young again. Story 7. When I was 6, my family went on holiday to Tenerife. Most evenings, we visited a karaoke pub filled with other British holidaymakers. There was a lively, drunk teenager from London who would create all kinds of drama. However, when she got on stage to sing, everyone would quiet down and listen. I barely remember it, but my parents remarked that she had an amazing voice. Fast forward to 2 years later, it's 2008, and Adele is becoming very popular. My mom was watching one of her music videos on TV and exclaimed, "That's her. That's the Londoner we met at that pub." So, yes, you could say I technically met Adele before she became famous. She was like many British teenagers, a party animal. Story 8. My old roommates attended high school with Ben Affleck, Casey Affleck, and Matt Damon. They would often come to our house and party when they were in town. Matt seemed funny and nice. Ben was also funny and incredibly magnetic to women. They were all over him. It was almost strange how attracted they were to him. Casey, on the other hand, was somewhat difficult. He never brought any beer or anything else to our apartment and was always complaining. This was more than 30 years ago. Story 9. My cousin went to secondary school with Cillian Murphy. They weren't friends, but they were friendly enough with each other. They engaged in small talk while waiting outside the classroom or in the hallways. He said Cillian was gentle, reserved, and a genuinely nice person. In Ireland, if you're not into hurling or Gaelic football or rugby in private schools, you're often excluded from the popular group, but everyone liked Cillian. My cousin noted that even back then, he was the same person you see in interviews, mild-mannered and kind, like an Irish version of Keanu Reeves. My cousin mentioned that he often got in trouble for skipping Irish class, but then again, we all disliked that class. It's good to know he's back living in Cork now. Story 10. I attended college with Aubrey O'Day. My boyfriend had been cheating on me for quite a while, and although I wasn't in her friend's circle, she called me up and said, "He's here with her right now. Dump him, he's trash." All of my friends continued to associate with him. She was the only one who helped me. This was also around the height of Diddy's fame. We all remember her getting large breast implants, and she was a very small girl at the time. It looked ridiculous, but she kept saying Diddy told her to do it. He certainly had a negative impact on her. She's still a beautiful and talented person, and I feel bad for everything she has been through. Story 11. George Michael was really quiet and shy. I was always convinced Andrew Ridgeley would have been the more famous one. Green Day, on their first UK tour as kids, we took them to a typical raucous, drug-fueled London house party. They were like rabbits caught in the headlights, not knowing what was going on. They were nice guys, and after their support set in a pub in Camden, we knew they were something special. Story 12. Jeremy Renner was in Australia around 2012. At that time, he had completed The Hurt Locker but was not yet a major star. I had camped out at a roadside park while traveling on my motorcycle. He and a few people stopped to stretch their legs. He approached me and asked if I was going far, as my bike had several panniers due to my lifestyle of living off it. I informed him that I ride year-round, following fruit harvests while living in my tent. He chatted for a long time and seemed genuinely interested in my traveling life. I mentioned that I recognized him as an actor, and he laughed, saying many film critics would disagree. He was a super genuine and nice guy. Story 13. I knew Dan Stevens, the actor, a bit at university. We were just acquaintances. I once watched him and Rebecca Hall star in a production of Macbeth. Dan was a genuinely nice guy, very intelligent and infuriatingly good-looking. Story 14. Mahershala Ali was popular in high school. He played on the basketball team and was very good. He was well-behaved, got along with everyone, and was teased a little for taking theater class. He went by Herschel Gilmore back then, but he does not appreciate being called that now. Story 15. I attended elementary school with Aaron Carter before he became famous. He was a nice kid, and it is sad what happened to him. Story 16. I grew up with John Krasinski. When I was really young, he lived a few houses down from us. He was 1 year older and in the same grade as my brother. They did Cub Scouts together and he came over to my house many times and vice versa. John and his family are really great people. I have a photo of John, me, and a few others when we were around 6 years old. I showed it to a couple of people because they didn't believe me. They wanted me to post it online, but I never would. I respect his privacy. Story 17. I saw Julian Baker shortly before she became well-known. Before the show, which took place in a cafe, I accidentally cut her off and nearly knocked the coffee out of her hands. I did apologize, but I had no idea it was her until she was on stage about 30 minutes later. Story 18. Lindsay Sterling was very friendly, creative, and hardworking. She always had some sort of project she was working on. I saw her perform the violin dancing acts she is known for very early in its development. She was always cool and an authentic person. It's still a little strange to me how famous she is. She may not be the biggest celebrity, but she has certainly achieved mainstream success. Her collaboration with Evanescence is unexpected. We were both in high school when Evanescence was popular, and then a decade later, she is featured in a song with them. It's interesting to think about, but Lindsay herself is great. Story 19. I went to kindergarten with Jordan Peele. He was my friend. I have some pictures from my 5th birthday with him. When I was in my 20s, I was in Amsterdam and picked up a magazine on the street. I saw him in it doing comedy and improv. I was really happy for him and a bit surprised. Then Key and Peele happened, followed by the movies. I am really happy for him. He was a good kid in kindergarten. Story 20. Jay Leno delivered groceries for a small market I worked for in Cambridge. He was just beginning his stand-up comedy career. He was genuinely a nice person. Story 21. Anthony Carrigan, known for his role as NoHo Hank, was on my floor in college. He was very sweet, funny, and charming. A bit aloof in a typical teenage actor way, but still a lovely person. This was before his alopecia became evident, and many girls had crushes on him. He resembled Johnny Depp. Story 22. Members of the Bloodhound Gang. We were all drunken fools in college. Story 23. Kyrie definitely knew the world was round when we were in third grade together. Joking aside, he was kind in the classroom and on the playground, but also insufferably cocky when it came to basketball. Story 24. Alicia Silverstone was a very good friend during my first year of high school. She was effortlessly charming, sweet, innocent, kind, intelligent, and hilarious. She was just a friend, no crush or stardom nonsense. She gained recognition through her connection with Aerosmith and probably faced challenges as a young person, eventually leaving our high school because of work. I know she would likely remember me, but there hasn't been any reconnection, which is fine. Let people live their lives. I have to admit, out of all that history, I am a huge fan, and seeing her post about family life and return to acting is amazing. She is excelling in different roles that are incredibly interesting. Watching her in The Killing of a Sacred Deer was mind-blowing. Her acting skills are truly impressive. We hung out on weekend nights with some other girls, and we sat next to each other in English and geometry. I should pull out the essay she wrote for our AP English class. She is a really good person who got caught up in the industry but seems to have come out healthy and well with a great family and a successful career. I'm really happy for her. Story 25. Joe Keery worked at a burger place near DePaul University when he was in theater school. He always gave my daughter a special little glass of ketchup to dip her fries into. We didn't know him well. He was a server at a restaurant we frequented, but he seemed like a genuinely sweet and friendly person. Story 26. I attended high school with Anne Hathaway, though she preferred to be called Annie. She was dedicated to musical theater. I saw her perform in several productions at the Paper Mill Playhouse in our town. She was a genuinely nice person, slightly nerdy, a bit socially awkward, with a beautiful singing voice. I was often irritated when people criticized her early in her career because she truly was a nice person. I'm glad to see her experiencing continued success. Story 27. Ethan Embry clearly had a special quality about him, but he was just a regular guy in a good way. He seems to still be like that. We were in middle school youth group together. Story 28. I attended high school with Natalia Dyer, and in the one class I had with her, she was very smart and kind. Story 29. I went to university with Riz Ahmed. He was basically the same as he is now, an intense, talented, and politically minded individual. He was certainly one of those people who was destined for success, and most of us thought it would be through his music, not acting. Story 30. I used to babysit Anna Sophia Robb, known for her roles in Bridge to Terabithia and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Her mother was quite the stage mom, and it influenced Anna Sophia significantly, but beneath it all, she was a genuinely sweet little girl. Story 31. I grew up with Robert Eggers. We had sleepovers at each other's houses. We were close friends throughout high school. He was very normal but extremely creative and talented. You could tell he was going to be famous, and I always told him that when we were riding the short bus together. Story 32. Jessica Simpson's father was the pastor of the Christian summer camp I attended as a teenager. He would have her come on stage during his sermons to perform little mini concerts. She was not very good. I have a vivid memory seared into my mind of one particular time when she was up there in overalls and a tube top, which was scandalous for a Southern Baptist kids camp, really going for it. Belting at the top of her lungs, I can't recall what she was singing, but I remember it was bad, embarrassingly bad. My friends were all laughing from the secondhand humiliation when a blonde girl sitting in front of me turned around and snapped, "That's my sister!" This honestly made me laugh even more. So I guess one of my claims to fame is witnessing a tone-deaf 16-year-old Jessica Simpson singing her heart out and then annoying Ashley Simpson because I found it funny. Story 33. I guess this doesn't count since it was around 2010, but my sister used to babysit and teach horseback riding to the Spielberg children. She said Steven was quite nice, his wife was a nightmare, and John Travolta visited once and seemed off. Fun story. She flew out to the set of War Horse with them once and spent over an hour chatting with Benny Cumberbatch. She says he was the nicest person and was really passionate about a documentary. They also offered her an extra spot in the movie, but she turned it down because she had to be back in the United States for midterms. Story 34. Aubrey O'Day came into my workplace a few times, and we were friendly. I also went on a date or two with her roommate, who I believe was a college freshman. Aubrey was very kind and had a great personality. She came across as quite intelligent as well and seemed like an overall good person. Story 35. Liam Gallagher is exactly the same as he was during Oasis's heyday. He now seems like a great person. Story 36. I went to secondary school with Domhnall Gleeson. I didn't spend much time with him, but I remember that he was a friendly and charismatic young man. He didn't have a big ego or act like he was the main character. Story 37. I attended high school, and for a brief period, I was on the wrestling team with Brock Lesnar. He was definitely an unlikable person. He was good friends with the local sheriff's son, and I remember one time they tried to set me up by asking me to sell them marijuana. I wasn't even a dealer. Story 38. Taylor Hawkins. The stories are true. He was a cool, genuine, nice, and great person to be around. I met him a couple of times, and I had the same experience both times. Story 39. I have posted this before, but I once spent a few weeks on the road with John Cena back in 2000. My father was an ex-World Wrestling Federation wrestler who ran a small wrestling promotion. He brought Cena on tour right before he made it to World Wrestling Entertainment. My father and the prototype, Cena's wrestling name at the time, would main event at high school gyms all over Utah and Arizona. I was 18 years old at the time and helped out at the events. From what I remember, he was very relaxed, easy to talk to, and always eating. I primarily picked his brain about lifting and his bodybuilding routine. After making it big in World Wrestling Entertainment, he always treated my father well, mentioning him in promotions and making time for him backstage whenever they came into town. I can confirm he is a great guy since 2000. Story 40. She may be a lesser-known celebrity, but I designed Emily Henry's first 2 book covers when she was a budding young adult author about a decade ago. She has since undergone a significant transformation in her career and is now a prominent romance author, with all her books in some form of development for television and film. I often see clips of her on The Drew Barrymore Show, The Today Show, and other programs whenever I open Instagram. She was the sweetest, most grateful, and enthusiastic author I interacted with during my time in publishing. She went out of her way to reach out to me directly on many occasions to thank me for my work, as I was a designer with the publishing house and often somewhat faceless to the authors. I believe she also bought me a thank you gift after the release of her first book. She still responds to my direct messages on Instagram. I reach out maybe once a year to congratulate her on her latest accomplishments, and she seems just as kind and genuine as she always was. Story 41. I had a friend group that would occasionally run into Justin Bieber. The few times I met him, he seemed pretty ordinary. My friends disliked him because they thought he was obsessed with himself. I thought he talked a lot about his music career and came from a slightly more sheltered background than I did. We definitely made fun of him when the song Baby came out. Now that we are all adults, I can't help but feel a bit sorry for him. Fame subjected him to some abuse, and he missed out on the end of his teenage years. I hope he has found his peace now. Story 42. I went to high school with Paul Dano and Lydia Hurst. Paul was geeky, somewhat bullied, and kept to himself. He was short. Lydia was very nice and pretty. I sat with her in science class. Story 43. Marie Olvin, known as Girl in Red, was the best friend I had while on a high school exchange program in Norway. We had an English class together, and she was one of the first people with whom I felt a connection. She was fluent in English for career reasons, which made her one of my only friends for a long time until I learned Norwegian. I can't describe how important our friendship was to me, but as I learned the language, I made more friends and neglected the friendship I had with her. We lost contact when I left my program. She's so successful now that it's hard to get back in touch and express how much she meant to me. She's such a passionate, hilarious, and kind person. We spent my 16th birthday together driving around in her car, playing music for each other and having ice cream from a gas station. One morning at school, she showed me her music artist analytics, and she was thrilled because she had gotten her first listen in California, in my hometown. I had been on a video call with my mom the night before, telling her about my first friend and her music. I think my biggest regret in life is not cherishing her friendship more as I met more people. Regardless of her success, it's just sad that I can't really tell her that now. Story 44. Jennifer Connolly and her mother rented a home in my small Long Island town one summer, and she spent time with my circle of friends. One of my friend's mothers knew her mother. This was after Labyrinth. She was very nice. Story 45. I was a freshman and part of my sophomore year in college with Jared Leto. We hung out a few times and went to clubs on Friday nights. He wanted me to be his bodyguard even though he wasn't famous yet. He was arrogant with girls back then. They would throw themselves at him and he would sleep with them, then discuss the details of their experiences within earshot of the girls. Story 46. Dove Cameron was really kind. I met her through a good friend's sister. Everyone but me was involved in Hollywood, and even though she hadn't become widely known, she was definitely the most famous person at the table. Besides my friend and her sister, I didn't know anyone else there, but they made me feel welcome. She was very down to earth, and I can't help but root for her success. Laura from Krungbin is also super kind and thoughtful. My roommate convinced me to try mushrooms and go to a show with her. I had never heard of the band, but I was captivated by their music and stage presence. After the show, she met with the audience, signed my vinyl, and talked to my roommate and me for a good 5 minutes. Shout out to Kingfish, too. I met him at his 21st birthday party as he rocked the stage and was also extremely down to earth. Story 47. I attended university with Hosier. Both he and his brother were very nice individuals and performed on the university radio station where I was the station manager. We were both class representatives for our degree programs, and at the class representative training weekend, we built a mattress fort and slept in it. He kept making Scooby-Doo impersonations, and I had to ask him to be quiet so I could sleep. Story 48. Austin Creed, the professional wrestler, was a friend of my little brother in junior and high school. He was a good guy and quiet. Even then, he trained relentlessly, and everyone knew he was destined to be a professional wrestler. He was adopted. I taught him how to play Dungeons and Dragons. I remember he got a job selling Cutco knives, and my mom still has hers. Story 49. I attended elementary, middle, and high school with Zac Efron. I didn't know him very well, but he was always nice. I am happy for him and his success. Story 50. I met Hunter Schafer at a national high school arts competition. I was there for creative writing, and she was there because she had won an award for fashion, if I recall correctly. She carried a sketchbook filled with strange and striking line drawings. She was very nice and passionate about art. She told everyone who would listen that she planned to move to New York after high school to pursue acting. A few years later, I saw her on a poster for Euphoria. Story 51. I went to summer camp with Megan Fox when we were about 14 or 15. She went by Foxy and was very nice and effortlessly cool. A lot more girl next door, with less makeup and a style featuring plaid and shorts. I was a bit wary of her, being more of a nerdy and quiet girl while she was so gorgeous and charismatic. I don't remember too much about her, but she complimented my guitar playing and singing voice, telling me I looked really pretty when I played. In hindsight, I definitely had a summer camp crush on her. My response at that time to having a crush on another girl was deep confusion and mistrust. There wasn't much representation for bisexuality at that time, and I had no clue. So when she called me pretty and kind of looked at me, I think I just panicked and ran away. I only made the connection much later because she looked so different all made up in the movies. Story 52. I went to high school with Adrian Peterson. He was a nice kid but not very bright. We used to play poker with him and he would often cheat, but no one spoke up. This was a small town in rural East Texas, where there were many people who would not have interacted with a poor black kid otherwise, as it was clear he was destined for the National Football League. Story 53. I went to college with Monet Exchange, a drag queen. They are an absolutely lovely human being, very kind to everyone, and have a powerful bass voice. They were also part of the music fraternity and helped bring Peppermint, another drag queen, to our campus for a drag night. Story 54. I went to high school with Shania Twain's brothers and used to hang out at their house. I viewed her as my friend's occasionally rude older sister. She would come home and complain that we had all the lights on. I met Shania Twain when she still cared about her electrical bill. We used to wait until she fell asleep and then we would roll her truck out of the driveway in neutral and drive around back roads. Story 55. I graduated high school with Annie Clark and Mark Salling. Annie's success was not surprising, as people attended the school talent show each year to see her performances. She was very popular and I was not, so we didn't interact much, but she seemed nice. Mark was the only person who regularly bullied my friends and me throughout high school, so I never had a high opinion of him. I thought he was trying to compensate for insecurity, but I didn't realize it was much worse than that. Story 56. I didn't know him, but I spoke with Stephen Ewan around the time The Walking Dead was gaining popularity. He started the conversation by saying I looked familiar, which was ironic since he was the one becoming recognizable. He was really friendly and down to earth. However, I heard it became more challenging for him to hang out in casual settings as he gained fame due to some unwanted attention, at least when he first started becoming well known. I hope it all settled down, and I like to think he remains down to earth. Story 57. I grew up with Ezra from Vampire Weekend and Wes from Rah Rah Riot. They were both genuinely nice and incredibly smart, especially Ezra. They participated in the marching band and jazz band in high school. Ezra was well-liked, and we unanimously voted him class speaker for graduation. I remember when Facebook first launched in college, he would send out invites to see his band play in New York City. I remember laughing at the time and thinking I wasn't going to go all the way into the city to see a college band. In hindsight, I probably should have gone. Story 58. My uncles were friends with Dennis Miller while growing up. He and my uncles were typical mischievous troublemaker kids in a blue-collar Pittsburgh neighborhood. My mom told me she tied them all up once because they were being so annoying. Story 59. I met John Mayer right before he became famous. I connected with him through a producer I was working with who had just finished his first album, which went on to become a platinum-selling record. I attended what was likely his last bar gig. It was misadvertised, and I arrived just as the band was packing up. I introduced myself and mentioned that I was working with a colleague. He gave me a hug and apologized for missing the show. He took me to the band van and trailer, gave me several free t-shirts, and we had a great conversation about music. He is a really cool person. Story 60. Ryan Gosling in high school was already somewhat famous from the Mickey Mouse show. I didn't really know him, but he was in drama class with a friend. He tried to impress her with a terrible pickup line. I wish I were the mommy cat and you were my kitten, so I could lick you all over. He wasn't very popular. Story 61. I knew Aurora from her teenage years. We were from the same small town and played together on numerous occasions. She was part of a friend group of very popular and attractive girls. She seemed a bit out of place, very shy, and had low self-esteem. She did not sing much or show much of her musicality. Then, out of nowhere, she published a self-written song online, and everyone was blown away. The song was never officially released, and I don't remember the name. It's hard to say if her personality today is the same as it was when she was younger, due to how little she shared back then. She was very kind, never arrogant, and down to earth. Story 62. I was in a weekly Saturday acting class with Cara Delevingne approximately 15 years ago. She was very shy, quiet, and easy to talk to when I approached her. She attended only a few classes and then stopped when her modeling career took off. Story 63. I knew Dominic Monaghan before he became famous in Lost and The Lord of the Rings. He was, at least at the time, quite arrogant and unpleasant. My friend used to work in a local pub he would visit with his friends, and we would hang out there waiting for her to finish her shift. We became friendly with the regulars. He would do annoying things like put his fingers in his pint glass and flick it at her to get her attention for another drink, and he would talk down to her and laugh in her face. She is such a sweetheart. A year or so later, I heard he was a star in a new television show called Lost, and I only watched it out of curiosity. Then I got hooked. I hoped his character would be eaten by a shark or the smoke monster or a polar bear. I hope he has changed, but he was awful to my friend at the time. However, this was many years ago, so perhaps he has become more humble. Story 64. I went to high school with Michael Pena. We sat at the same lunch table during our junior and senior years in the same group of friends. As you might expect, he was a funny guy. Story 65. I was internet buddies with Taylor Swift before she became famous, and we exchanged long messages back and forth like flirty teens do. I tell nobody in real life because it's the kind of thing a crazy person would say. Story 66. I knew Alana Glazer from Broad City during my freshman year at New York University. We lived on the same floor and were very close and friendly for the first few months. She was always sweet and bubbly. We would go to Wendy's and try to get into over 21 places with our group. I always had the sense that she liked me, but I wasn't interested in her at the time. My tastes back then were different. My specific memories with her are fuzzy, but our entire dorm floor was very close, and we were always hanging out and visiting different people's rooms. It was a nice community until I got bored and wanted to seek out new friendships. Years later, I spotted her in a subway ad for Broad City, and I was very happy for her. Story 67. Not really me at all, but my wife got too drunk at a party, and Josh Hartnett let her sleep in his bed. She threw up in his toilet and he slept on the couch. She woke up with a massive hangover but apparently remembered everything. It has been confirmed by a few friends, so I assume it is all in line. Story 68. I lived in a group house with Alex O'Loughlin as a teenager. He was dating one of my best friends. He kept milk in cups next to his bed that would go bad and stink up our house. He refused to throw it out, which was disgusting. He tried to buy a dog from his dealer without asking anyone else who lived there, even though we had a house cat, and it was not a good idea. He used to steal my cigarettes from my bedroom when I was at school. He was your basic nightmare roommate. His smile didn't work on me, so I had to be the one to say no. He definitely hated me for it. Story 69. I sat across from Esther Povitsky in elementary school. We had the word pneumonultramicroscopic silicovolcaniconiosis written on a piece of paper taped to our desks to help us learn it. We both eventually memorized the word, but I had to look up how to spell it just now, so once again, time defeats us all. Story 70. I met Eric Andre around 2003 through my boyfriend's band. They all attended Berklee College of Music, and Eric would sometimes open for them as a stand-up comic. He was just as much of a lunatic then as he became on his show. Story 71. I attended high school a year ahead of Howard Duro, one of the Backstreet Boys. He was a genuinely kind person and well-liked by everyone. He loved musical theater and participated in school plays. We recognized his talent but did not realize the extent of his abilities. Story 72. I was in an acting class with Nicholas Braun, who plays Cousin Greg from Succession. He was super sweet, very open, and funny. He is also very tall. Story 73. I attended junior high and high school with Natalie Maines. She was a cheerleader and very involved with the choir. It will not surprise you to hear that she has always been outspoken, but her heart has always been in a good place. Our school district passed a dress code with a maximum hair length for boys, and our high school was going to expel an Indigenous student because he wouldn't cut his hair. She was one of the students who got involved in protesting that. Her father is regionally famous as a producer and a steel guitar player, so nobody thought much of it when she told us she also wanted to work in music. But it has definitely been cool to see how much farther she has gone than I initially thought she would. Story 74. I'm from the same town as Yellowwolf. He's a cool guy. I used to see him at the skate park occasionally. Story 75. I knew Evangeline Lilly in high school and bumped into her several years later at a party when she was doing phone sex commercials just before Lost. See you next Tuesday both times. Story 76. A much older friend of mine had a friend whose cousin was visiting during high school. This cousin was a few years older. They met, and afterwards she said he was cute. That cousin would later go on to become a little-known singer named Madonna. Story 77. Kylie Kelsey was the cool, laid-back, nice field hockey player in middle school, and she appears to be exactly the same today. Story 78. My mom used to say that Salma Hayek was her co-worker at a restaurant in the 1980s in Mexico. I don't know how true that is since there is no evidence of Salma Hayek ever working in a restaurant online, but I assumed there wouldn't be any records of a random part-time job. My mom said she was very friendly and would always invite everyone out after work and that she quit that job right when she landed her first acting role. Story 79. I worked with Andrew Santino for a long time during college. He was an absolute delight. We worked in fundraising, and he was a rare blend of hardworking and hilarious. It was a blast to hang out with him. He was incredibly witty, smart, driven, and thoughtful. We were primarily a group of high-energy college students, and he was always respectful and kind. He truly deserves tremendous success. Story 80. I went to high school with Shane Gillis. He was quite funny back then and very outgoing. His sense of humor has not changed much. Story 81. I attended high school with Mina Suvari. While she may not be an extremely famous person, it was a small private school in the Los Angeles area before she starred in American Pie. We were in choir together, and I must say she was not very pleasant and seemed quite arrogant. Story 82. I went to school with James Van Der Beek. I'm not a fan. He was a preppy kid who didn't get in trouble, but he bullied me a bit. I tried to steer clear and was glad when he transferred to a preparatory school in town. Story 83. A little unrelated, but my dad was born and lived in Liverpool. He became a milkman in the late 1950s and delivered milk to George Harrison's grandmother's house. He used to reminisce about collecting the money and hearing a band practice around the back of the house, with George's grandmother saying that it was just George and his friends practicing. Story 84. A friend of mine went to high school with George Eads from CSI Vegas. She said he was quite arrogant. I'm not sure if he has changed at all. My family knew the family of the country music duo Brooks and Dunn. They were very friendly. Story 85. My great-grandparents went to high school with Lyndon B. Johnson. My great-grandfather absolutely hated him. There is a photo in a newspaper of him shaking Johnson's daughter's hand. He looked angry, and she looked uncomfortable. Good times. Story 86. I went to high school with Jonathan Groff. He was cool, kind of nerdy, but hung out with the popular theater kids. I sat at his lunch table but didn't really know him well. He always seemed nice. Story 87. I used to teach overnight sessions at the Apple Store on Fifth Avenue. I have taught more celebrities than I can count, and I don't have a bad story about any of them. There were plenty of everyday regular entitled individuals to make up for it. Story 88. On the flip side, I am friends with a well-known celebrity. They were already very famous when we met, but now that I know them on a personal level, I no longer see a celebrity. They are just a normal person, perhaps a bit out of touch with reality, which can happen when you are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but they are a person nonetheless. Story 89. My cousin was a sound engineer who died from a heroin overdose. Before he passed away, when I was still a teenager, he would tell me all about upcoming artists and technology like the iPod. In one particular instance, he and his friends told me about Katy Perry, before she became famous and appeared on the Vans Warped Tour. I heard many rumors about her, suggesting she was a groupie who was promiscuous. I am not sure if those rumors were true, but he was not one to lie about things. He strongly discouraged me from getting involved in that lifestyle. He also had a strong dislike for Lil Wayne. Story 90. Timothy Chalamet was a kind person. He was the roommate of some friends of mine from college and never complained about them always hosting parties. Story 91. He was already famous, but not extremely famous in 2004 when my husband hotboxed his minivan with Shia LaBeouf. His relative was the chemistry teacher at my husband's high school, and she brought him in for a show and tell one day. I'm told he was an odd but fun person back then. Story 92. Not a well-known celebration, though British soap fans will know who I mean. Tom Lister from the soap Emmerdale. I grew up with him and we were in the same friendship group as teens. He was nice then and he's nice now, a genuine down-to-earth type of guy. I never watched the show. Story 93. I hung out with Gwen Stefani in 1994 when she was the lead singer of No Doubt. They had released one album, but not Tragic Kingdom, which is the album that launched their career. They played at a really small venue in Santa Cruz, and after the show, they just hung out and talked to everyone who was there. I was only 14, so I couldn't go to the bar area, but she came and sat at our table for a few minutes. She was really nice, funny, and had a chill vibe. I thought she was the coolest girl I had ever met. Story 94. I had a college class with Riley Green. One minute he was playing at a pep rally, and the next he was a country superstar. Story 95. I knew Chunks and AJ Shabil from work at Cineworld. They were nice individuals, and they seemed to have retained their humor. I'm glad they made it. Story 96. I knew Christian Potenza a little in the mid-1990s. He rose to fame as the voice of Chris McLean on Total Drama Island and appeared in the Disney movie Bunks. He worked as a server and busboy at a bar in Toronto called Betty's. He was just a casual acquaintance. I was a young kid working at a nearby advertising agency, and I was a regular at the bar. All I can really say is that he was exceptionally friendly and funny, well-liked, and just a nice guy. I still recall when a group of us regulars heard he got his first big break acting in a show being filmed in Toronto. We were all so happy and proud of him. When my two kids discovered Total Drama Island 16 and Bunks, it blew their minds that I had known him way back when. Story 97. I have two. Not sure how famous Hunter Parrish is, but we went to the same church as kids and teens. I was friends with his older sibling, so he was just a sweet, nerdy kid to me, typical theater kid, always on. I thought it was absolutely insane that he was able to convince his mom to move to Hollywood with him and leave the rest of their family back in Texas so he could try to be famous. It was even more surprising when it actually worked and he booked his first movie. The second one is probably more infamous than famous. As far as I know, he has only been in one thing, and most people like to believe that the movie never happened. I used to babysit Noah Ringer, known for The Last Airbender. He was a perfectly normal kid, and I hate whenever that movie gets brought up and he gets criticized everywhere. I have such a soft spot for him. Story 98. When I was about 13, we played street hockey often. One day, we were playing in front of a friend's house when his next-door neighbor finished cutting his lawn and started talking with us. He was a rookie or second-year National Hockey League player with the New York Islanders, who is now in the Hall of Fame. Brian Trottier was the nicest guy and would spend time discussing hockey and everything else with us whenever he was home. It was sad when he moved into a much more expensive house and neighborhood a couple of years later. Story 99. I went to preschool and a bit of elementary school with Jason Kidd and was best friends with his sister Denise for a while. They lived only a few blocks from us, so I would go over to their house every now and then to play with Denise. I was in love with that boy. I remember he got stung by a bee one day on the playground at school, and the faculty had him lay down on a cot inside. He was in agony. I was sitting right there next to him, thinking, I can't leave Jason's side. The faculty kept telling me to go outside, and I resisted at every turn. I was dramatic then, and I'm dramatic now. Fast forward to high school, we played in the same league as Jason's high school, and every time we knew there was a game against them, the whole school felt gloomy. Everyone was mopey and sad because we knew we were going to lose because of that kid. Story 100. This wasn't before she was famous, but I was partying with Erica Alexander all night in Belize. I thought she was just a Belizean lady hanging out with us because she danced so well, and the whole country seemed to enjoy it too. Come to find out, she is one of the stars of Living Single, a show I used to watch with my grandma all the time. She was super kind and down to earth, even when people approached her starstruck. Story 101. I met Sandra Bullock at the grocery store a few years ago, and she is incredibly sweet. There is nothing bad to say about her. She is just a gem. Story 102. I knew Ronnie Pickering. He was a kind-hearted person. However, his wife fell ill and, on her deathbed, gifted him a puppy. Sadly, someone broke into his house, stole his prized car, and killed his dog. Story 103. I know a few people who were camp counselors for Justin Bieber. Apparently, he was one of the more difficult preteens. Story 104. My dad attended the University of Missouri, and while he was not in the same fraternity, he often saw Brad Pitt at events, as one of my dad's friends was in the same fraternity. He said Brad Pitt was a nice guy and extremely charismatic, capturing people's attention. Story 105. I went to middle school with an extremely popular TikTok personality who was very entitled. Every interaction with her revolved around herself, her life, or her family, including the fact that they had a Tesla in 2015 when no one else in town did. She even owned a stamp with her name on it, which she used on assignments because writing her own name was too much effort. She couldn't be seen doing it the usual way. About 2 days before 7th grade ended, she got into a fight with another girl over a boy named while they were both dating. She ended up getting expelled, and by the next fall, she was at a prestigious private school. Now, when you Google her, it doesn't even show that she attended public school. Around the time she started becoming TikTok famous, her father ran for a Republican office in our county and failed miserably. They were embarrassed and moved to Los Angeles. Story 106. I interacted with Melanie Martinez 3 times in high school when I was a senior and she was a freshman. She had a relaxed vibe, and while I doubt she would remember me, we did share a brief laugh at one point. One of my friends had a crush on her, and I mostly talked to her to provoke him. I could at least understand what he saw in her. Story 107. I went to high school with Edison Chin. I didn't know him well, but I knew he was nice to all the pretty girls, while everyone else was overlooked. He was disrespectful to the Mandarin teacher, Ms. Yuan, which led to his expulsion from school. His mother sent him back to Hong Kong to live with his father, who put him in a commercial for contact lenses, and his career took off, or so the story goes. I always hoped he would become more famous in North America so I could say, I went to high school with that guy, but then he made a mistake. Oh well. Story 108. I went to high school with 2 people who are famous in their fields. One is country singer Corey Lane. I was a freshman when he was a senior, so I didn't really know him, just in passing. He, his brother, and my brothers were the only pairs of identical twins at our school, so they knew each other better. They were typical football players, but not unpleasant from what I remember. Everyone in town watched their episode of American Idol when they made it to the judges, but didn't receive the ticket to Hollywood. The girl who always got the leads in our spring musicals didn't even make it that far, and she was upset. The second is comedian Jared Carmichael. We were in the International Thespian Society together, but it wasn't an active club, and I was involved in about 12 other extracurricular activities that I devoted more time to. We had mutual friends, but he mostly kept to himself. He was nice during the times I talked to him, but I think he thought I was odd. Story 109. I attended preschool and part of elementary school with Caitlin Dever. I have a photo of myself and my best friend with her as toddlers, as well as photos of her and her sister performing at the talent show. I can't remember much about her since we were so young, but she was sweet, and I am happy for her success. Watching her in Dope Sick was surreal. Story 110. I lived across from Mina Suvari. We rode our bikes to the candy store a couple of blocks away. I was often in trouble and sent to my room, so I would throw change out the window to her, and she would go get the candy. She made me give her half for going. Her teeth were the same, but even then they added to her looks. As a child, I could tell she was unusually good-looking. Otherwise, she was a completely normal kid who lived in a mansion. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.